All right, so today we're going to be looking at this manga Lost+Brain, and it's been called Death Note's Evil Twin. And we've got a pretty interesting stack of sources here, reviews from My Animalist, even a Reddit deep dive from like a hypnotist's perspective.
Wow.
And yeah, a couple of your notes as well. So
Right.
yeah, so I'm really curious to see what we find. Like, if this is it as good as Death Note? Is it just a cheap imitation?
I think what's fascinating about this particular manga is that it seems to trigger such strong reactions from people.
Oh yeah.
Some people absolutely hate it. They're like turned off by the Death Note comparisons and they just think it's a ripoff.
Right.
But then other people, they kind of see something unique in it, something intriguing, beneath the surface. And so I think our mission today is to figure out why this manga got so much hate, and particularly from Death Note fans.
Yeah.
But also see if maybe it deserved a second chance.
Okay, so let's unpack this right off the bat, just looking at these My Animalist reviews.
Yeah.
People are brutal. They are just calling this thing a Death Note ripoff, pointing out that the main character, Hayama Ren, even looks and acts like Light Yagami.
Oh, yeah.
So is that a fair assessment, or are they missing something?
Well, I think it's true that on the surface, the similarities are pretty striking.
Yeah.
I mean, you have these genius high schoolers who are manipulating others for their own idea of justice. They both want to achieve like a better world, but I think the key difference lies in the methods,
Okay.
Death Note is very much a cat and mouse game between Light and L, right?
Yeah.
Light's using the Death Note to eliminate criminals. Lost+Brain goes into the psychological realm of hypnosis. So Ren is using his powers to kind of reshape society.
Oh, wow.
By altering people's memories and personalities.
So it's not just about punishing the wicked, it's about like controlling everyone's minds.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot more ethically questionable.
Oh, for sure.
Even if Ren thinks he's doing good.
Right.
It's still like you're messing with people's free will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting to me that a manga about something as complex as like hypnosis is getting slammed for being shallow.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I know, and that's where this Reddit post from a hypnotist gets really interesting.
Okay.
They break down each instance of hypnosis in Lost+Brain, and apparently the author did surprisingly good research.
Wow.
They even referenced some real-life hypnosis projects like MKUltra, which was the CIA's infamous mind control program.
Culture, like actual conspiracy theory stuff?
Yeah, MKUltra was a real program.
Wow.
And they were exploring the potential of hypnosis for espionage and interrogation. It's a really dark chapter in history.
Yeah.
And Lost+Brain doesn't shy away from those unsettling connections.
Yeah.
There's even this one part where the author uses a technique similar to one that MKUltra tested, where a hypnotist accidentally made his subjects commit suicide.
Oh my God, that's so dark.
Yeah.
And definitely adds a layer of creepiness to this whole thing.
Right. But it also makes me wonder if the author did their homework on the hypnosis front. Why did so many readers still find it lacking compared to Death Note?
Yeah, I think it boils down to execution,
Okay.
So while Lost+Brain might be technically sound when it comes to depicting hypnosis, it seems to stumble in other areas, particularly pacing and character development.
Okay.
A lot of reviewers said the story felt rushed, predictable.
Really?
And it just lacked the nuanced character arcs and intricate plot twists that made Death Note so captivating.
So it's like they had this awesome concept, a genius.
Yeah.
Using hypnosis to like control people, but they didn't give it enough room to like breathe.
Right. Exactly.
Instead of that slow burn thriller like Death Note, we get this like whirlwind of hypnosis techniques and ethical dilemmas.
Yeah.
And I feel like I would be overwhelmed instead of satisfied as a reader.
I think that's a great way to put it. Imagine if Death Note had tried to condense Light's entire journey into like a handful of chapters.
Yeah.
The impact would have been so much less. And all those nuances of his character would have been lost.
That's cool.
So maybe the author of Lost+Brain was so focused on showing off their knowledge of hypnosis that they kind of skipped over those crucial elements of storytelling that make a manga really engaging.
But what about the ethical questions?
Yeah.
Even if like the plot and the characters weren't as well developed as they could have been, shouldn't a manga that tackles something as complex and potentially dangerous as hypnosis get some credit for at least trying?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where I think Lost+Brain, despite its flaws, offers something unique. It forces us to confront these really uncomfortable realities of mind control and the seductive allure of power.
Right.
Like, Ren genuinely believes he's doing the right thing by eliminating negative emotions and forcing people to conform to his vision of a perfect society. but his methods are undeniably tyrannical.
It's like that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yep.
His heart might be in the right place, but his actions are straight out of a dystopian novel.
Right.
He's not just eliminating criminals, he's reshaping society in his image.
Yeah.
And that's terrifying.
Yeah, and that's why I wouldn't dismiss Lost+Brain as just a cheap imitation of Death Note.
Okay.
It might not be as polished or as critically acclaimed, but it still has this potential to spark really important conversations.
Yeah.
About free will, the nature of good and evil, the dangers of unchecked power.
Right.
Even if it stumbles a little bit in its execution.
Yeah, I see that.
And that's actually where the hypnotist's perspective in that Reddit post comes in.
Okay.
They argue that Lost+Brain, while flawed, does deserve credit for accurately portraying the potential of hypnosis, both for good and for evil.
I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that this hypnotist was impressed by the manga's accuracy.
Yeah.
Seems like such a contradiction.
I know.
Praised for its technical accuracy, but criticized for its weak storytelling.
Well, what's fascinating is that the author seems to have prioritized realism over narrative convenience.
Okay.
Take Itsuki Kunji, Ren's former mentor and the main antagonist.
Right.
He's a skilled hypnotist himself,
Yeah.
but he's constantly one step behind Ren.
Yeah.
And some reviewers saw this as weak writing. But the hypnotist argues that Kunji's struggles actually reflect the limitations of real-life hypnosis.
So instead of giving Kunji super hypnosis powers
Exactly.
to make him a more formidable opponent,
Yeah.
the author chose to keep things grounded in reality.
Yeah.
Even if it meant sacrificing some dramatic tension.
Yeah, and I think that might have alienated some readers who are expecting a more clear-cut battle of good versus evil.
Yeah, like in Death Note, you have that clear conflict between light and L.
Yeah, it's epic, suspenseful.
Yeah.
But Lost+Brain, the ethical lines are blurrier.
Yeah.
And the characters' motivations are more complex.
So it's the author was trying to have their cake and eat it too, showcasing the mind-blowing potential of hypnosis while still adhering to some degree of realism.
Exactly.
And maybe that's why Lost+Brain didn't resonate with as many readers as Death Note.
Huh?
It's straddling this line
Right.
between fantasy and reality, which can be a tough balancing act.
Yeah, for sure.
But even if Ren's abilities are exaggerated for dramatic effect, the core concept of using hypnosis to control others is still incredibly disturbing.
Absolutely.
It really is.
Yeah.
The manga doesn't shy away from exploring the potential for abuse and manipulation.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so thought-provoking.
For sure.
It's like a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
Reminding us that the human mind is both powerful and vulnerable.
Absolutely.
We have this capacity for great good and great evil. And the choices we make, the influences we allow into our lives can have profound consequences.
Speaking of choices, I'm curious about Ren's motivations. In Death Note, Light starts out wanting to punish criminals, and his descent into megalomania is gradual.
Right.
And in a twisted way, understandable.
Yeah.
But with Lost+Brain, Ren's goal of fixing humanity through memory manipulation kind of seems to come out of nowhere.
It doesn't really have a clear beginning.
Exactly.
Like that origin story.
It's not as grounded, and it makes it hard for readers to connect with his actions, even if they understand the mechanics of the hypnosis at play.
Yeah. Light's journey, while morally reprehensible, has a clear arc.
Right.
Ren's, on the other hand, feels less grounded.
Yeah.
And it's harder for the reader to connect with his actions.
Yeah, I think that's another reason why Death Note fans found Ren less compelling than Light.
Interesting.
He lacks that kind of charismatic darkness that made Light such a fascinating anti-hero.
Yeah, I can see that.
You know what I mean?
Totally. And without that compelling protagonist, it's harder to invest in this story.
Yeah.
Especially when the supporting characters also kind of fall flat.
Right.
A lot of reviewers complained that the supporting characters felt really one-dimensional.
Yeah, they lack the depth. L, Misa, and Nier from Death Note.
It's the author was so focused on researching hypnosis and crafting these intricate mind control scenarios that they just forgot to give their characters believable personalities and motivations.
Yeah, maybe they were so focused on the technical aspects that they neglected that human element.
Right.
That makes the story really resonate with readers.
So even if Ren's abilities are rooted in reality, his motivations and the actions of the supporting cast lack depth, and it makes it hard for the reader to connect with the story on an emotional level.
Exactly. And that lack of emotional connection might be the missing link that prevented Lost+Brain from reaching the same level of acclaim as Death Note.
Okay. This whole discussion about hypnosis has me thinking, could something like this actually happen in real life?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Could someone use hypnosis to, like, control others on a mass scale, like Ren does in the manga?
That's where the line between fiction and reality gets really blurry.
Right.
I mean, while Lost+Brain's portrayal of hypnosis is rooted in actual techniques, the extent to which Ren's able to control others is clearly exaggerated for dramatic effect.
But the fact that he's able to use things like television broadcasts and subliminal messaging to influence people's thoughts and behaviors, it's still kind of freaky.
It is.
Especially with all the talk about, like, misinformation and media manipulation these days.
Absolutely.
It's really relevant.
It taps into all of our anxieties.
Right.
About how our minds can be influenced without us even knowing.
Exactly.
And that's something we should all be mindful of.
For sure.
Especially in this age of, like, information overload, constant digital stimulation. We need to be critical thinkers. We need to question our assumptions. We need to, like, guard against those who are trying to exploit our vulnerabilities.
It sounds like Lost+Brain, despite its flaws, serves as a valuable cautionary tale.
For sure.
It's a reminder that the pursuit of a perfect world can lead down a dangerous path, and that even the most well-intentioned individuals can become tyrants.
Right.
If given the power to control others.
Absolutely. It highlights the importance of free will and individual liberty. You know, Ren's vision of a world without negative emotions might sound appealing at first, but it comes at a really steep price.
Yeah.
The suppression of individuality and the loss of personal freedom.
So it's a reminder that, like, true happiness and fulfillment come from embracing our complexities.
Yeah.
Both the good and the bad.
Exactly.
And from making our own choices, even if they lead to mistakes or hardships.
Yeah. And that brings us back to the question we posed at the beginning of this deep dive.
Okay.
Did Lost+Brain, despite its flaws, deserve a chance?
We've explored the Death Note comparisons. We've unpacked the intricacies of hypnosis.
Yeah.
We've tackled some pretty heavy ethical dilemmas.
For sure.
But I still have this one question.
Okay.
If Lost+Brain had so much potential, why did it ultimately fall short? Well, I think it comes down to a few key factors. First, the pacing was off.
Yeah.
The story just felt rushed, like the author was trying to cram way too much into too few chapters.
Right.
Needed more time to breathe.
Yeah.
You know, to let those characters and themes develop more organically.
I agree. And like we discussed, the characters themselves just weren't as compelling as they could have been.
Yeah.
I mean, Ren's motivations just felt underdeveloped compared to Light's.
Yeah.
And the supporting cast lacked the depth that made Death Note so engaging.
It's almost like the author was so preoccupied with showcasing their knowledge of hypnosis that they neglected the fundamental elements of storytelling.
Yeah.
Character development, pacing, emotional resonance.
Precisely. They had this fascinating premise and clearly did their research, but they didn't quite manage to translate that into a truly captivating narrative.
And we can't forget about, like, the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
The Shadow of Death Note.
Right.
It's tough to follow in the footsteps of a masterpiece.
It is.
Especially when you're dealing with similar themes and character archetypes.
That's a crucial point. I think Lost+Brain was inevitably going to be compared to Death Note.
Yeah.
And those comparisons ultimately worked against it.
Yeah.
It's not that Lost+Brain is a bad manga.
Right.
It just suffers from being judged against an exceptionally high standard.
So it's like a flawed gem.
Yeah.
But a gem nonetheless.
Exactly.
And maybe, just maybe, someone out there will be inspired by Lost+Brain to create a manga that truly captures the terrifying potential of hypnosis.
Right.
While also delivering a compelling and thought-provoking narrative.
That's a very tantalizing thought.
It is.
Perhaps this deep dive will spark a renewed interest in Lost+Brain.
Yeah.
And lead to a reevaluation of its strengths. And a recognition of its unique contribution to the world of manga.
So what are your final thoughts? What stood out to you from all these different perspectives on Lost+Brain?
For me, it's the audacity of the concept.
Okay.
Lost+Brain dared to explore a concept that few other manga have touched upon. The power of the human mind, not just as a source of creativity and ingenuity, but as a weapon capable of manipulating and controlling others.
It's a scary thought, but also a fascinating one.
It is.
It makes you question the limits of free will and the nature of reality itself.
Exactly. And even though Lost+Brain might not have fully realized its potential, it still serves as a valuable cautionary tale.
Okay.
It's a reminder that we need to be vigilant to question our assumptions and to protect the sanctity of our own minds.
Well said. So if you had to sum up the legacy of Lost+Brain in a single sentence, what would it be?
Lost+Brain, though flawed in execution, offered a thought-provoking glimpse into the terrifying potential of hypnosis and the ethical dilemmas it poses, reminding us that the human mind is both a powerful tool and a vulnerable target.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
But it perfectly captures the essence of this deep dive.
I think so.
It's been a wild ride exploring the comparisons to Death Note, unpacking the intricacies of hypnosis, and grappling with some truly mind-bending concepts.
Absolutely.
And who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe this deep dive will inspire you to delve further into the world of hypnosis, to explore its history, its applications, and its potential for both good and evil.
Yeah. There's a whole world out there waiting to be discovered.
I have a feeling this isn't the last we've heard about Lost+Brain.
I agree.
It might not have been a masterpiece.
Right.
But it definitely left its mark.
It did.
And sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah.
To spark a conversation, to challenge our assumptions, and to remind us that the most powerful weapon in the world is the human mind.
Well said. And on that note, we encourage you to keep exploring, to keep questioning, and to never underestimate the power of your own mind.
Until next time, keep those brains sharp. And remember, not all who wander are lost, but some might just be hypnotized.